Today's question is, what is something you think everyone should know about being in a relationship?
Just a little advice. The honeymoon period will end. Trust me, it is not joint ecstasy that forms a solid bond. It is facing adversity together that will make you stronger. Not to mention the mundane day-to-day stuff, the annoying habits, one partner wanting more sex than the other, the repetition, and the fights about who should do the fucking dishes. Underneath the calmer waters, the relationship is either growing in strength or gradually being eroded away. The latter can be stopped if you both realize this is happening and are both committed to working on it. Speaking of work, long-term relationships require constant maintenance, and sometimes hard, bloody work. This shouldn't be one-sided, though. A partnership implies that you are both in it together. When you find yourselves up shit creek, you both better start paddling. Some relationships do have an expiry date. Sometimes you grow apart. If you're ready to move on to the next stage of life, it can be hard if your partner is holding you back. And you don't have to put up with abuse or cheating. Learn to love yourself and find fulfilling things in your life because your partner isn't there to fill those holes. Yes, you will carry one another through the tough times, but your partner can't be expected to solve your deep-seated issues. It is important to look after yourself and have some time to yourself, especially if you have children. And finally, having children is one of the hardest challenges you will face as a couple. It will test you, and you will probably find yourself actively disliking your partner, and many of you will consider separation. At the end of the day, it's awesome having someone by your side, fighting in your corner. Smiley face. Married 4 years, 2 kids, been to hell and back together. We lived together for about 6 months. Possibly the best 6 months of life up to then. You know, slogged after the 9 to 6 grind, the usual feeling, like somebody bashed you head in with a blunt object, thinking of what you're going to do for dinner. Then, that moment of clarity, a tiny miracle, an epiphany, oh yeah, she will be there. Or if I get home before her, I will shortly hear her keys on the lock and move to the door like a giddy child. She was usually home first. She'd hear me coming and greet me at the door, sometimes with little to nothing on. Sometimes she'd lock the deadbolt, and I'd hear her giggle as I turned the key and bruised my shoulder at the same time. We grew to be somewhat childish in our off times. Not everyone does, but our bedroom passed through to the bathroom, then out into a hall and back into the bedroom, and was separated by French doors. This was conducive to a chase, and she'd make me run her down when I wanted it. When you live together, sleep side by side each night, you get to know your own quirks more intimately. You are a mirror held to each other. You get to know that you steal pillows and blankets, and that sometimes she'll sit up in bed and mumble some question of nonsense to no one. When you put your arm under her, she'll protest. She'll say your arm will fall asleep, but you won't care. You sort out who likes the shower head pointed high, who needs it low. Same with computer chairs. You've got, by default, somebody to worry about you. Take care of you when you're sick. Wait up when you're working overtime. You come home to the TV on and a bowl of soup on the kitchen table. You shop together. For me, shopping no longer seemed like a chore. I ate better. She was a good cook. As a sales rep, she traveled a lot for business, and so she'd spend half a day before a trip making my favorites and freezing them in gallon bags and labeling them in marker. She was afraid when she was gone I'd eat junk, like a kid, and she was right. I often dismissed the freezer bags of the things I told her were my favorites and loaded up on pizza, MCDs, chips and Coke. So this leads to the most important piece of advice. Don't be the one to clean the place out when, and if things come to an end, if you can help it. Or take some help. Standing there with cardboard boxes ready to be folded, 6 months of memories destroyed me. Cardboard boxes are such an indignity then. They are blank and ugly and brown on the outside, and when you put things in them, it's like they're gone, eaten up. It's not even the sentimental things, not even the nested leather heart boxes from Bombay Company you got her one Valentine's Day, or the handmade beer cozy she made you in return because she was broke, but the little things, most innocuous things, like hair ties. Yes, hair ties were everywhere, and imagine having to pick them up one by one, or be cleaning and have one pounce on you, the fist of rubber clutching strands of her hair. then the things you have to throw out because you can't see any possible way to keep them. You open a freezer, and there they are staring back at you, each neatly labeled with her handwriting and date, long expired, and a little smiley face, a bag of bacon and kale soup, some empanadas, glittering there right where you had left them, a freezer full. I broke down cleaning the place out, having to box up all her stuff because she was no longer around to do it, and take the boxes back to her folks. Everyone says relationships are hard, which is true to an extent. With the right person, it's easier and worth it. If you're in a destructive relationship, fighting every night, and sticking through it because relationships are hard, don't. It's not worth the time, effort, or heartbreak. For the youngins, don't text 24/7. There's no space, it's suffocating, and any flame will be extinguished. If you don't have compatible sex drives or beliefs about sex, it's not going to work. If you're not happy, talk about it. Don't string an unhappy relationship along. If you feel guilty about leaving the person, think how much more guilty you'll feel when you're with them for even longer and they learn you weren't infatuated with them. Try to surprise one another in a positive way. Little massages, gifts, notes, sweet texts, etc. keep your love fresh and communicate your feelings after a honeymoon phase may have ended. Just because your parents' marriage may not have worked doesn't mean you cannot have a successful relationship. You are not ever doomed to their fate. If you aren't okay being single, you shouldn't be in a relationship. I'm saying this as someone who tends towards codependency and who grew up with a mother who did the same. If you are only dating someone to fill the void in your life that a partner would fill, you are going into things for the wrong reasons. You don't necessarily need to be happy to be in a relationship. I have depression and have a mostly functional relationship right now, but being able to take care of yourself and, more importantly, watch out for yourself will make things so much better. When you build up the idea of everything being perfect once you get a boyfriend or girlfriend, you make stupid relationship decisions. You ignore your gut feelings telling you that this person seems a little off because they're nice and cute, and they seem normal most of the time. You ignore your friends telling you that they don't like this person even though you've trusted their judgment with everything else. You ignore it when your new partner starts to push boundaries you aren't comfortable being broken, and you accept the excuses they give you because they love you, and you tell yourself those words mean you're happy. The best relationships I've had have started when I didn't want a boyfriend. I'm not saying that's the only way to start a good relationship because that definitely isn't true. But if you are comfortable with the idea of being alone for the time being, you will be much more objective when dating people and you will, hopefully, save yourself a lot of grief. I believe that in every relationship between two people, one person plays the role of the seeker, which means that he or she actively spends more time pursuing the other person, who takes the role of the sought. When I talk about pursuit, I do not necessarily mean when one tries to make the other into their significant other, although that certainly counts too. But I also just mean when one person seems to try harder than the other to hang out, to get in touch, etc. I would actually say that this dynamic applies to every relationship, and most certainly to every significant other relationship. The healthiest couples are usually, of course not always, those that have the smallest gap in between the seeker and the sought. If it is either so small that it cannot be noticed, or even small enough that the two people change roles back and forth, that usually makes for a relationship that can last for a while. One must also watch out at the beginning of a courtship or even a new friendship. If you meet someone, exchange phone numbers, and or add them to your Facebook, you would do well to not send them 10 unanswered text messages a day. If they are replying to your 10 messages, obviously the gap between you is small and you are on the right track. This may sound like common sense, but it's amazing how often people ruin potentially good relations because they fail to exercise restraint. I have been on both ends of this before. When you are the seeker, you feel that if you do not put in 60% or more of the total work required to maintain a relationship, that it will fall apart. Most often, the sought knows full well that the seeker feels this way and may use it to their advantage. At the beginning, the distinction between the two can be blurred by mutual enthusiasm for one another. In these instances, I would say that both parties are seekers and thus are both sought. but inevitably an imbalance will evolve. In the best of scenarios, this imbalance is negligible or practically non-existent. Sometimes the imbalance grows exponentially, like a cancer. The sot becomes annoyed with the seeker's constant attempts for more affection/attention and then pulls away. The increased distance makes the seeker panic, and consequently they will seek even harder. This cyclical downward spiral situation is amongst the worst of cases. Of course, human relationships can be incredibly complicated. Not every relationship can be boiled down to these two categories, but it provides a useful model when one contemplates their relationships with others. And this is the end of today's video. I hope you liked it, and don't forget to comment an anecdote or experience similar to the topic of the video. Leave your like, share if you liked the video, and lastly, don't forget to activate the little bell so you don't miss any of our daily videos. Bye-bye.